What? No, 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 wait.
We do not want any adventures here. Thank you. Not today. Not...
I suggest you try over the hill or across the water.
Hey you geeks! This video is coming about due to some technical difficulties making my planned India cinema review not happening. So it is in fact forcing me out of my comfort zone of passive-aggressive jibes at Hollywood into something more direct and topical. That is the unfortunate habit of streaming services to force shows into an 8-episode structure that changes the adaptation of the main character from a reluctant hero generally into someone more proactive. We saw it in Wheel of Time, we saw it in Rings of Power, we saw it in Percy Jackson, and now it seems that we're going to see it again in Avatar: The Last Airbender, as the showrunner told IGN. We essentially give him this vision of what's going to happen, and he says, I have to get to the Northern Water Tribe to stop this from happening. That gives him so much more narrative compulsion to go forward, as opposed to, let's make a detour to go ride the giant elephant koi. That type of thing. Aang is no longer a dumb kid who oopses his way into adventure. Instead, he's a man with a plan. Emphasis on the idea of man, as we're going to, in today's video, discuss what a reluctant hero was and why they worked well in media prior, and then how Hollywood seems to think that that is immature, and in order to attract the Game of Thrones crowd, they need to make the hero proactive and mature. From there, we will discuss how this mature, proactive hero shoved into an 8-episode series structure is what makes all of these recent adaptations seem so heartless. The reluctant hero. In fiction, there are generally 2 types of heroes. The first kind who...
I want adventure in the great wide somewhere.
And then there are those who don't. It is generally the female protagonists who want adventure and the male protagonists that don't. This is probably a symptom of the greater rule in storytelling that a story must exist to shake up the status quo, and the female status quo is one of staying in, while the male status quo is stereotypically that of going out. Brandon Sanderson does, however, put this nicely into gender-neutral terms for us. Stories happen around the things that the character or magic can't do generally. This is just kind of storytelling basics. If you've got a character that is an excellent boxer, then you tell a story about someone who is a stronger boxer than them that they have to face. The best and non-sexist examples of this can come from Sanderson's work in Warbreaker, where 2 princess sisters had been training all their lives for 2 different things, one to go out into the world and one to stay home. The plot begins when they switch roles. Same can be said in The 2 Princesses of Bamar. Hollywood is not so nuanced and just relies on the gender to make the dichotomy for them, as they did with Galadriel in Rings of Power, because she wants adventure so gosh darn bad.
I go to seek the enemy that escaped us in the north. Alone, if I must.
And the tension comes from her society telling her not to have adventure.
They will be escorted to the Grey Havens and granted passage across the sea to dwell for all eternity in the Blessed Realm.
So, like any sane heroine would in the context, she would ride the boat almost to heaven before jumping ship to go do what she wants. It seems that painting by numbers, Galadriel is the streaming service's manic pixie dream girl. She is a proactive heroine who won't take no for an answer, and that drives her to do extreme stunts that are perfect for cold openings and trailer shots. At the extreme, should we fear that Aang will be turned into a Galadriel type, burdened with glorious purpose and going to drive the plot forward no matter what the context around him? The trailer didn't look that way, though.
Right. There goes the savior of the world.
But trailers are not full episodes, so there is reason to be concerned, especially with the Rings of Power being what Amazon created to try and cater the Lord of the Rings fandom to the Game of Thrones crowd. So, with Netflix now making similar promises, we may have reason to fear. Mature content? The next big statement from Netflix in the IGN article was comparing their new show to Game of Thrones. I know industries like this like to have comparable standards, and this may just be a phrase that's boilerplate in their dossiers of what to tell their creatives to tell the news outlets. However, this phrase should burn. Since it hasn't, we got the show writers telling this to IGN. We had to make it a serialized Netflix drama, which meant it couldn't just be for kids. It had to also appeal to the people who are big fans of Game of Thrones. And so it had to feel grounded and mature and adult in that way too. So what does it mean for Avatar: The Last Airbender to be more grounded and mature? Does it mean that the hero has to be more proactive, like they did when rewriting The Wheel of Time, or writing The Rings of Power, or adapting Percy Jackson? Ironically, the comparable title that they drop here of Game of Thrones begins with a reluctant hero in Eddard Stark.
Lord Eddard Stark, I would name you the Hand of the King.
I'm not worthy of the honor.
And frankly, what is more relatable and mature for an adult upon being told that their entire life as they know it is about to change, losing their income, social structure, and just everything? Do adults generally respond with stern or even enthusiastic choruses of,
"Let's get down to business"?
Or do their inner child still resonate with Aang's immaturity in not feeling prepared for what's coming next?
I don't want the responsibility.
You don't have to do this alone. You have me, Tara, and a flying ball of fur.
Robert Jordan, the author of The Wheel of Time, thought the latter was true, and had his protagonist Rand be much more reluctant than even Tolkien's 50-year-old hobbits to take on his quest.
Well, I did a lot of growing up in the country, and I've always thought that what those country folk would say, "Oh, is that so? Look here, have another beer. Have two on me. I'll be right back. I will, really." And then slip out the back door.
Rand tries and fails for 3 books to avoid the call to adventure, and each time he fails more spectacularly than the last. While I can't say definitively that Mike and Brian intended to make The Wheel of Time for kids when they sat down to write Avatar: The Last Airbender Book 1, I will say that they kind of succeeded at that anyway. Complete with a hero who was so reluctant to join the call up for adventure that he ran away from it for 100 years.
Why did you disappear?
I didn't mean to.
We need you, Aang.
Then Aang only agrees to pursue his hero journey because, 1, his new crush, Katara, needs to learn water bending, and he can do fun stuff along the way.
If we go to the North Pole, you can master waterbending. We can learn it together.
Aang, like Rand, is a reluctant hero. The kind of hero that streaming services don't seem to like. So, it's hardly surprising that when Amazon adapted the Wheel of Time, they recast the lead as Moraine, the wizard mentor figure, the woman with a plan and a vision.
The Dark One is waking. His whispers are already in the backs of our minds. But there will be one who can stand against him. The dragon has been born again.
Yet, for all of Moraine's proactivity, it is actually her plans themselves that bring about, at the end of Season 1, the return of, well, not the Dark Lord, but...
We didn't defeat the Dark One. We set his strongest lieutenant free.
Our heroine, ladies and gents. True, there is something to be said about heroes making mistakes. But if the show does not have time to explore why they are mistakes and how the hero grows from them...
I am not letting you walk away from me again.
I know. Alana will see you to the tower.
Then the narrative weight is lost. Wheel of Time's choice to focus on Moraine's plans while kind of ignoring her failures is very telling for me on how Hollywood interpreted Game of Thrones' success. Omitting the graphic sex scenes, Game of Thrones gives us a wide cast of characters who are always plotting. Cersei, Peter Dinklage, and Littlefinger all have several schemes up their sleeves and all fundamentally never change. Kudos to George R.R. Martin for actually making these characters compelling for a few books.
I have this thing where I get older, but just never wiser.
But Hollywood, in its infinite wisdom, has overlooked the fact that even the great George R.R. Martin himself can't write a good ending, and the show that they came up with failed miserably. They seem to just focus on the idea that if characters have interesting action-packed plans, the audience will find that character interesting. Contrast. In the comments of last week's episode, some of you guys pointed out that the 8-episode structure was probably due to how long streaming services thought they could keep the audience's interest. Thank you for that, otherwise this episode would be very short indeed. I looked into this topic, and Business Insider actually had a really interesting article on it from 2015, so back when Game of Thrones was wrapping up its 5th season and still growing strong. They noted that streaming sites like Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu don't care how many episodes a show has. A full season, whether it's 10 or 22, is an opportunity for their subscribers to binge watch. Yeah, remember when 10 episodes was a short season? Ugh.
Those were the days.
For a more recent take, I did find a Screen Rant article, who I generally find a bit iffy, but they brought up a few more good points. The cost of production has risen for these shows. Shows like Percy Jackson, even with Disney Plus's seemingly bottomless coffers, still had to have Grover stand behind a few tables in Camp Half-Blood to save on VFX budget. And I don't blame them for that. The fact that shorter series are cheaper to make, regardless of the higher cost of production, also leads the way into the second point that Screen Rant made in nice bold letters, that shorter series are less of a business risk for streaming services. And this sort of bites them, as they also try to be less risky by taking titles that fans are already familiar with and adapting them. It seems like streaming services want the security of a familiar title without the risk of truly committing to the bit of what made that original show so successful. The shows are being condensed into 8 episodes of what is often touted as the shorter series benefit. That is, each episode is action-packed and plot-focused. However, this can come off as clunky, as we saw in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, whose time, which should have been spent building a Shire-like home feeling in Camp Half-Blood, turned it into, copy my reading buddy's metaphor, a video game instructional level.
Demigods have always fought for glory. They used to call it kleos. It's like this stuff that attaches itself to your name, makes it bigger, scarier, more important.
There was very little time to get emotionally invested in the camp or the campers or even Percy as just a dorky kid in way over his head. Even Avatar: The Last Airbender in animation took time to show Aang as a kid amongst the scars of the genocide of his people.
Gyatso.
Knowing Aang first as a dorky kid is what made his transformation during the season finale to be downright scary and memorable.
There's no hope now. It's over.
No, it's not over.
Compare that to Percy's big self-revelation in the finale of his show.
If you're not careful, you'll find out who I am.
That could have hit so much harder if Percy had had time to just play around at Camp Half-Blood with the other Hermes kids, and then when bedding down for the night, have a great Jean Valjean moment.
Who am I?
Like Frodo, Bilbo, Rand, and Aang, unprepared truly for what adventure awaited him outside of his doorstep.
It's a dangerous business, Frodo. Going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
And it's their journey from the contrast of the boring country bumpkin lifestyle to the action-packed finale that make the story and the internal change in their characters. Before Game of Thrones crashed and burned, there was a huge following of Jaime Lannister on his journey from being the sort of guy to push a small child out of a window amongst other distasteful things.
The things I do for love.
To be an honorable man, first by losing his hand, then by going on a buddy trip with Brienne throughout the continent of Westeros, where her honor seems to rub off on him. But then he returns to King's Landing, and it sort of fizzles out.
They say the best swords have names. Any ideas?
Oathkeeper.
Then when we reach the series finale, among all of the outcries, there were still people who were mad that Jaime died in the arms of his sister, exactly where he began.
Nothing else matters.
Hollywood seems to have ignored this warning from even the Game of Thrones fandom and gone ahead with producing proactive heroes who never change. We get Galadriel, who starts the series intent on destroying Sauron, and she ends the season intent on destroying Sauron. But along the way, she accidentally helps Sauron and brings chaos and destruction to the good people of the Southlands and Numenor. Whoopsie! For which she does not take any narrative blame.
Where is Halbrand?
He is gone. And I doubt he will return. And should he ever, none of us are to treat with him again.
Our heroine, ladies and gents. If Aang starts the series committed to defeating the Fire Lord and ends the series committed to defeating the Fire Lord, then what exactly is the motion of his narrative? Where is he going? Where is his contrast?
I'm the Avatar, and I'm gonna save the world. With my friends.
Now, the show has not come out yet, and the writers have also said that they want to keep tension with Aang as being just a little kid. But if the studio beneath the writers aren't willing to commit to that bit and give them enough time to flesh it out, which considering ATLA is only 8 episodes, I have concerns. So I'm kind of cranking my expectations down a bit for Netflix's Avatar in the hopes that Netflix will exceed them. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye!